Okay, we're just 60 days out from the New South Wales election, and a new poll has Labor winning with a 56-44% lead. But Dominic Perrottet is leading Chris Minns as preferred Premier. I'm delighted to say we now can welcome the Shadow Water and Housing Minister, Rose Jackson, who's joining me now. Rose, thank you for your time. Labor are ahead. You've got to be heartened by this. You've got to be heartened by this poll. Are you measuring up the carpet and the curtains yet?
Look, not quite, mate. I mean, yeah, we're heartened. But you say there's only 60 days to go. I say, oh, my God, there's still 60 days to go. And, a lot can happen in 60 days in politics. And you know that, particularly in a campaign. So, we are feeling good. I certainly think a lot of the issues that we're talking about are resonating with voters. But it is still a while to go, and it's a big task for Labor. Unfortunately, we're still quite a long way behind. We've only won twice from opposition since World War II. So, no, there's no measuring of drapes. There's just focusing on issues and talking to voters about what a Labor government would look like.
Well, I'm interested in what the types of conversations you're having with voters and what you think is attributing to this surge in the polls. One yesterday I really liked was the UFC going to Sydney. I thought that was a winner for Labor, but I'm not sure it's an election winner for you. What are the key triggers for the voters out there in New South Wales?
Yeah, well, it's not going to shock you to know it's cost of living, mate. It's so expensive to live in Sydney and in all of New South Wales really right now. I mean, our housing costs are through the roof. We've seen massive rent increases. If you live in Sydney, the amount you're paying on tolls is insane. So really, and that's coming up in the polls too. When they're asked about issues, voters are identifying cost of living, and we are really seeing that, that inflation pinch is huge here in New South Wales. So that is a very big one. I think it's also just 12 years of Liberal and national government. That's a long time, 3 terms. And to ask for 4 terms, I think you've got to be pretty exceptional. And I don't think this government is. I think a lot of people accept their best days are behind them. So that, I think, is quite a big factor too. And yeah, Labor does have some interesting new ideas. We've had a lot to say on housing, but whether it's major events we're going to bring to Sydney or, some of the other ideas we've had, we're trying to be a bit fresh, a bit different. We do need to be different from, Labor governments of the past. We accept that. So it's going well, and we are feeling positive when we're talking to voters.
Okay, let's go back to the cost of living for a moment, because it is a bellwether issue in the last federal election and state elections that are coming around. What formal proposals are there from Labor about cutting the cost of living and helping household budgets out?
We haven't released our full package on that one, Cory. So, it's a little bit of watch this space, because we will have a lot to say, particularly around things like toll relief. We've done some work, particularly on housing and renting. And so I just mentioned that because one of the big factors in the cost of living increase is how expensive housing and renting is. And so we've done things like talking about outlawing secret rent bidding, which is jacking up rent prices here in New South Wales. We're talking about offering stamp duty relief to first home buyers, because, that's just a massive cost for a lot of people trying to enter the housing market. So, we're really trying to make sure we're covering the full breadth of issues, but absolutely there's more to come from us. And I think, that's the point. There is still 60 days to go, and people are starting to switch on, Cory, but it's always been the case in New South Wales that the campaign doesn't really kick off until Australia Day. So, that's tomorrow. We sort of think from next week we're in the campaign proper, and cost of living is going to be something that we are going to have a lot of announcements about, because it's just coming up every single time we're talking to voters.
Okay, now given you raised it, I've got to go there. Will you be celebrating Australia Day? Do you think it should remain on the 26th of January?
Yeah, look, it's not a date that really works for me, I have to say. I've been on the record previously saying I think we should look at a new date that unites the country. But I'll be honest, New South Wales Labor has absolutely no plans to change the date of Australia Day. That's not a priority for our team. For me personally, I'll probably be getting down to Yabun, which is a festival that we hold here in Sydney, with Aboriginal people. But I've got to be clear, it's not something that New South Wales Labor as a team is particularly focused on. We're focused on cost of living, mate. That's what we're talking to voters about.
Okay, it's not all one-way traffic. The poll today had Chris Minns trailing a long way behind Dominic Perrottet. It seems that voters have forgiven him his Nazi costume for his 21st birthday, which was a massive storm in a teacup. There are now reports this week that Stuart Ayres may return to Cabinet. It seems Labor want to exploit that as it might be a winner for them. Do you think these things are going to actually hurt the Liberal Party, or is this just a natural state of affairs that opposition leaders are always behind in the preferred Premier ranks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right, mate. You correctly identified. We, have, it's hard to cut through in opposition. Let's just put it that way. Obviously a lot more people know who the Premier of New South Wales is than the opposition leader. When the election campaign kicks off, they start switching on and going, well, what's the choice here? And I think as that happens, more people are going to get to know Chris, and I think people are going to like what they see. So I'm not too worried about that figure at the moment. I think over the next 60 days, I reckon there will be a lot more people focusing on the choice between the Premier and the alternate Premier. And once they start really getting to know Chris, hearing what he has to say, I'm feeling very positive about it. I mean, look, I agree that the Nazi costume isn't going to be a big factor. We've said that we think the Premier's apology was genuine, and that the conversation should be about the issues: cost of living, housing, tolls, our schools, our hospitals, on the future, not on the past. So I don't think that's going to be a big issue, but I think that as people get to know Chris over the course of the next 2 months, they're going to be saying, yeah, let's give this guy a go, because I think he does have some good ideas.
All right, now one of your former Labor colleagues, Tania Mihailuk, left the Labor Party last year. There was a bit of a storm around it. She announced last week she's running with Mark Latham on the One Nation upper house ticket. And she said the Labor Party had lost its way to the left-wing extremists and property developer mafia. How do you respond to that? And how do you think voters should take those comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think voters should look pretty closely at the context in which they were provided. I mean, I don't know about that well-known alliance between left-wing extremists and property developers. I don't think those comments make a lot of sense. I think, unfortunately, Tanya's had a, sort of falling out with some of her local branch members and has, decided to spit the dummy and join One Nation. And considering she comes from one of the most multicultural parts of Sydney, I think that's a strange choice. And sure, she's taking a few swipes on the way out. I think people expect that. I think they should be pretty dismissive. I don't think there is a lot about Labor's agenda that bears those comments to be accurate. I mean, I ask her, what about, I'll talk about cost of living, housing, tolls, bringing the, UFC to Sydney. I don't understand what she is talking about, other than, she's a bit bitter and she's a bit angry and she's joining another political party and she's trying to take a swipe at Labor. I think people understand that.
Well, one of the things, Rosie, that I think there is a legitimate criticism and a concern is that there's going to be an economic impact for some in her former seat in Western Sydney if there's this wokish rush to renewables policy. Now, it's hard to criticise Labor because you've got the Liberals that have rushed into this space as well. But, renewables policy might suit the woke, but it doesn't satisfy business, it doesn't satisfy consumers who are going to have to pick up these huge energy bills and the reliability that goes with it. So how are you going to address that issue?
I mean, we've always said, that we think the future of energy in New South Wales is renewable energy, but we've also been incredibly clear that needs to be, really clearly focused on whether people can afford to pay their energy bills. We don't accept spiking energy bills in New South Wales. And to be perfectly honest, I think a big part of that has been because of this government's privatisation agenda. I think that has actually played quite a substantial role in what we've seen in energy policy in this state. You compare, some of the increases that we've seen in New South Wales with some of the other states who have not privatised their entire energy network, and there's quite a big difference. So, look, you're right. We need to be honest and have conversations about how to have a smart and sensible transition that doesn't impact people who simply can't afford to pay more for their energy. But if we're having an honest conversation, that's also a discussion about privatisation, because there is no doubt that has also played a substantial role in what we are seeing in the energy debate in New South Wales.
All right, Rose Jackson, I've got to leave it there, but thank you for making yourself available tonight, and I look forward to having another chat with you over the next 60 days. Long days, as you pointed out.